Hello there, and welcome to week 3 of another exciting episode of Com 1010. I am your game show host, Professor Ann Tune. And so let's try and get this going once again, and hopefully there won't be any confusions like there was last week, shall we? So let me start sharing this screen and we can get going, and away we go. Look at him. Week 3, same guy as last week. Let's try and do this again, shall we? Let's do this. So this is how I'm going to start out every single week in terms of a lecture. You will find that all the videos are broken up, but this particular video, which should be at the very top of everything that you see, is actually an introduction as to what to expect for the week ahead. And the reason why I'm saying this again is because apparently not a lot of people saw last week's. And so if you're missing this week's, then that means that you're just not paying attention. So I'm going to reiterate once again a huge chunk of what I said last week, and that is how this is broken up. Each week, you will find video lectures and how the attendance is laid out in this space right here, in this discussion board, in this lecture. So what typically happens is I do all of my lectures via Zoom. Your chapter lectures are all broken up, so that way you have time to look at your video lectures in terms of your chapters and then walk away. And it just depends on how many chapters that we are discussing this week per the calendar. So that's one thing. Another thing is that there's always this particular video that's always at the very top of this discussion board and this lecture. And that's because what I do is I basically talk about what's coming up with this week and the following week and the following week, if possibly, what I feel that needs to be touched on. And so when you start a week in terms of a discussion or a new week in terms of your class week, you always start with this video first, so that way you know how things are going to get laid out for this week and the following week. So let's be very clear. It all starts right here, and then you start to move forward. All within this discussion board, which is embedded into also your modules. So there are several places where you can find all of this, but I figured that the best place to start would be in your modules on a weekly basis. So from this point forward, due at the end of this week, week 3, is chapters 5, 12, and 14. And if you look at your syllabus, or I should say your calendar, it is due by this coming Sunday, January 31st at 11:59 p.m. So obviously you go into your ebook, you knock those 3 chapters out, and you should be good to go. What is on tap in terms of video lectures for this week is what was due from the ebook last week, which is chapters 3, 4, and 19. Also, I want to talk once again, because it's important that you understand that your first engagement activity 1 is the syllabus test, which is due by the end of this week, which is week 3. Also, I'm going to discuss with you once again engagement activity number 2, which is your plagiarism quiz, and your multiple choice exam, which is due by the end of week 5, where you can find it, how you can take it, and from that point forward, a few other mentions about it. Also, I will be discussing your upcoming speech, which is actually due next week, and that is analysis of social change, as well as your goal setting paper and what is expected of you. And again, that's all due next week and at different dates. So I want you to be very mindful of the dates and the due dates on both of those. Now, underneath this discussion, we will go further into if you look forward or how everything is set up. Obviously, I will have the 4 videos that are set up. And for this particular end of attendance, you have to answer a question that's pertaining to one of the videos that's been embedded in one of these chapter videos. Now, I want to be very certain, because this is what I noticed what happened last week, and that is everyone was confused as to what videos we're looking at. When I do attendance and when I talk with these video lectures, It's not so much that they have nothing to do with the chapters. In fact, I've taken my notes, and what I've done is these video lectures that I've done with the chapters are basically an enhancement of what your book is about. But when it comes to attendance and when it comes to videos that I talk about, they have nothing to do with the ebooks. And I'm sorry that that may be a deflation, because it's like all of a sudden you have to look twice. But the whole point is to look at as many of these videos as you can and to have some takeaways. So that way, since this is an online course, you can look at as many perspectives as you possibly can. I've extrapolated videos that I've thought throughout the years that correlate best to the chapters that you are studying, on top of what the actual chapter videos have in them. So with this particular video chapter, and every single time I talk about videos and attendance, they're always embedded within this discussion board, within this weekly video lecture, meaning obviously here's your intro, and then you have whatever many chapters. If I'm talking about a video lecture in terms of attendance, it's actually embedded in one of the video lectures that's within this discussion board. It has nothing to do with any of those videos that you are seeing in your ebook. So you do need to understand, because that's what I noticed. Everyone was responding on the board. Excuse me, I have a little itch going on. Everyone was discussing on the board videos that they saw that were in the ebook. And I'm like, I'm not talking about the ebook. I'm talking about the video that I embedded in one of these chapters. So what I'm never going to do is tell you which chapter video to look at, because they're all separated. And the reason why I'm not going to do that is because you're just going to go straight to that, look at it, and possibly not look at any of the rest of the videos. So that's not what I'm going to do. You're going to have to go through all of the videos, or I should say all of the chapter videos, and then find what I'm asking you to find within 1, 2, whatever 3 chapters that we're discussing that week. So for this week's particular video, attendance, I should say, what I need you to remember is, let me share this once again. There is a video, actually there's 2 videos embedded in one of the 3 chapters that are discussed this week. It could be in chapter 3, it could be in chapter 4, or it could be in chapter 19. There are 2 videos, all within that same chapter. They are very different in contrast. What I want you to do is basically look at those videos and give me your perspective, and how would you move forward if you were in that type of a situation. And since we're getting closer to analysis of social change, this basically has to do with analysis of social change. So when you're looking at these 2 videos, they are very much in contrast. And so how would you go about in terms of presenting yourself? Video, and you'll understand exactly. One of them has to do with a former president. One of them has to do with a former leader. So it's about 2 former leaders and how they go about with social change, and how they speak, and the differences and the contrast of how they speak, and what are you gravitating most to, especially in your own work, and why. So think of it that way. And again, it's not in the ebook. I also am encouraging you that when you're done typing everything out, excuse me, that at least you go back and you have dialogue in between your peers as well, and those thoughts. So I'm giving you a heads up right now as to what you're about to look at in those 3 videos. So, or I should say, in those 3 chapters, there's 2 videos that you have to look at in order for your attendance that's due by, at the very latest, Sunday, January 31st at 11:59 p.m. Now, before I go into chapters 3, 4, and 19, once again, I'm going to talk about your syllabus quiz, which is engagement activity number 1, and it's due by the end of this week. And again, that's by the end of, or I should say Sunday, January 31st at 11:59. So let me take a look as to where I can show this to you really quickly. So this is week 2. Here's week 3. This is where you can find it. And once again, you have your submission box right there. You can either type it out once you start submitting, or you can upload in one of three files, either a doc, a docs, or a PDF. There are 8 questions that totals 10 points. And you can get going on this right now. And 2 of them have about 2 pointers. And I'm really adamant when it comes to attendance. So, and there's reasons behind that. And I think it's because what had happened last semester when it came to COVID, people were taking advantage of a lot of the situation. And so I have basically revamped and redid the attendance in terms of what's excused and what's not excused when it comes to COVID in particular. And that's actually in your syllabus quiz. So I want you to really pay attention to that in your syllabus as you move forward, when you are actually moving forward further into this class in terms of weeks. So this is due, like I said, the end of this week, which is on Sunday, January the 31st at 11:59. So that's your first engagement activity. Next, let's see if I can go back. What else I want you to take a look at is engagement activity number 2, which is your plagiarism quiz, and your multiple choice exam, which is by the end of week 5. Both of those are by the end of week 5. So let me go really quickly. This is week 3, your week 4, your week 5. So engagement activity number 2, which is a plagiarism contract, there is your link. It is 10 questions. You are only allowed 1 wrong answer before you are certified. If by chance you get more than 1 wrong, you have to retake that particular quiz. I said this in last week's video. I'm going to say it again. This isn't necessarily an easy question, answer, whatever the case is. I've spoken with many students that have taken this over the last couple of years. This is a standard and this is a requirement. It's out of University of Illinois. They've set up this plagiarism certification. And, it could take you 5 minutes and it could be a one-shot deal, or it could take you hours. So the reason why I had started since last week, since week 2, talking to you about it is so that way I can get it embedded in your head that this stuff needs to be done. Because when it is due and you're at the 11th hour and you still haven't passed the quiz because you keep getting 2 wrong or 3 wrong and it jumps you off and then you have to retake it and so on and so forth, I don't want an email at 10 o'clock on that Sunday night that it's due and Professor Antune, I need an extension. So the reason why I don't want that is because if you don't have this plagiarism certificate finished, then you can't move forward and actually do your informative or your persuasive speech for that matter, because a lot has to do with ethics, it has to do with credibility. And so this is what it pertains to, or this plagiarism certificate is what it pertains to. So again, granted it's only week 3 and it's not due for another 2 weeks, but I would highly recommend that you start getting involved, or at least start on the ball and getting this started as soon as possible. I also wanted to touch on what's called your first exam, if this will move forward. It's worth 25 points. And if you look, and it's an external tool. So once you go into this new window, it automatically takes you back into your ebook. The ebook is what is set up for the quiz, and it's 25 questions, or I should say 25 points. I actually thought it was only, I thought it was 50 points. It was 25 questions at 2 points apiece, but apparently not. And so it covers chapters 1 through 5, 12, 14, 18, and 19. So again, this is week 5, and by then we have covered all of this. You would have done all of these chapters by now. So what basically this quiz is telling you is that these chapters you should know about. This particular quiz is nothing that you allegedly don't know about. And it takes you into that external window and it takes you straight into your ebook, so that way you can take the quiz. Now, I can actually give you, a study guide that we used prior to this. Was like years ago when it was a huge exam, when it was a midterm that had more questions and more points. But this particular, we basically taken the same exact quiz, or I should say the same exact exam that was the midterm, and we've broken it up into two parts. So just to like alleviate some of that pressure of like this huge, huge quiz or this huge, huge test. Two things that I want to remind you of. If you by chance need more than the allotted time, because I believe if it's 25 points, it's probably a 30-minute test and then it'll just knock you out. That's just my guess. I don't know the truth. And you won't know it. I've never taken it, so I'm gauging it's just that, because they basically give you about a minute per question. So if it's just 25 points, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be 25 questions, a minute per question. You're looking at 25 minutes. Maybe they've stretched it to 30. If you need more time, then I am encouraging you right now to reach out to me and to reach out to student disability centers, so that way I'm aware that you're probably getting some sort of recommendation or accommodation, so that way we can help you stretch that time. You don't have to tell anybody. It's just a matter of telling them, getting the certification or getting the piece of paper, and then of course sending it to me. And it's happened more times than anybody. So I shouldn't say anybody, but it's happened enough times where it's very common that if you do need that extension for whatever accommodations that you need, that we can do it for you. And remember that, myself and STS, we're always here for you. So no pressure to you at all. We just want your success when it comes to these things. I will say this much, and I'm always gonna be transparent. I can't stand the book. I don't mean it like in a bad way, but what I am saying is that, there are certain standards that this department and that this particular class has, and that is going through all these chapters, going through all those learning curve quizzes, taking those 2 exams. And because basically what they want to do is that's how they figure out and gauge how much knowledge you have on top of actually speaking. So these are things, these particular compartments, meaning your learning curve quizzes and your exams, that I actually have no say so, and I have no, what's the word that I want to say? I'm like having a brain fart all of a sudden. I don't have any control over. So you have to get these done, you have to knock them out, and you have to move forward. So that way, at least you can focus on the more important things, which is actually doing your speeches. So these particular things that I'm showing you right now need to be done, and try not to feel any pressure on them, so that way you can just get them done, and we can have at least a little bit more time to work on the more finer things, if you will. So there you go. So you have the plagiarism contract and you have this exam 1 that's all due for week 5. So I've talked about that. I've talked about your first one. We'll get into your lectures shortly. We've talked about that. Your upcoming speech and what's required, and the goal setting paper. So let's talk about that for a quick second, shall we? Let me try and figure out exactly where. I've got so many of these opened up. Let me go back to your module and let me go down really quickly. 2, 3. Now you see what's due for this week. And please don't be scared with all these materials. Remember, what's essentially just due this week is syllabus quiz 1, chapter 5, chapter 12, and chapter 14. All of this material, when it comes to chapter 5, are basically references towards chapter 5. They're there to enhance you. They're there to give you more information, so that way you can understand chapter 5 a lot better than just going in it blindly. Now, I'm going to touch on this again, and I'm sorry if I'm reiterating, but I think it's just better to reiterate than to not understand the situation. And if I get any more questions, within this week or the next week, I'm just going to refer back to these videos. So once again, let's look at the very top of week 4. Now, again, this is a 2 to 3 minute speech. It's a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's worth 30 points. And how to load it, you just go straight into this local, or I should say load analysis of social change in a window. This takes you into GoReact, which is in your ebook. And then you can begin your speech, uploading your speech, possibly even recording it right there. Or if you have the speech that you've done possibly on your phone, like let's just say you've already set it up and you've actually already done it, then you can upload it through there. What I want you to realize, or what I really want you to understand, is that what you are not allowed to do before I go any further is sit down like I'm doing. Instead, you are to stand up the entire time. I know I'm like I'm out of the frame or whatever. So it is your responsibility to actually frame yourself properly when you stand up prior to recording, so that way everything can be done properly. What I also want you to be aware of, and this chair is just like pissing the crap out of me here, sorry about that. What I also want you to be aware of is that the advantage that you have for this particular speech, or for any of the speakers for that matter, is that if you didn't like what you just did, or if you messed up, you can actually stop and do it over again. I don't encourage that, because when you do have the opportunity of being face-to-face with people and presenting speeches, or in not a discussion board, in a boardroom, or let's just say you're in a TED Talk, you don't have the luxury of stopping and stopping. I need you to get into the practice. Joking. I mean, it is a fact. You have to get into the practice of speaking. So do your best to speak, or do your best to practice as much as you possibly can, even under all of these circumstances. Give yourself a couple of times before you actually start to record, so that way you don't stop and start, or stop and then go start all over again. What you're not allowed to do is edit your videos. So let's just say you had a brain fart going into what your next line, whatever it is, and then you stop it and then you start again. Because guess what I can tell? I'm in video production as well. So I know a thing or two when it comes to editing. And I had that a couple times last semester, and I started taking points off. I gave a warning the first time, but then I started to take points off, because it's just not fair. And that's not how real life face-to-face public speaking is set up to be. So again, before I go further into more explanation when it comes to your analysis of social change speech, or any of them for that matter, remember to always stand up. Remember to always try and frame yourself as best as possible. Always double check your sound, so that way it comes across. So that way I don't have to email you back and say, hey, by the way, I can't hear you. Can you do this again, type of a thing. And also, if you have to, stop it and then go back and do it all over again, as opposed to stop and start, stop and pick up, and then I can see all the edit points. But if you cannot, I don't encourage that at all. Like, I would rather that you just do a one take and then call it a day, because that's just really how public speaking is. So I'm telling you this right now, so that way I'm not going to tell it to you again next week. So let me go back again, and then we'll just go from there. So this is where you're at with that. Remember that. Next. These are your directions once again, and it's basically your rubric. You have to look at public speaking, or I should say analysis of social change, as a narrative. There's a beginning, there's a middle, and then there's an end. And of course, I did a lot of detail work in terms of explaining in week 2's video as to, obviously it's 30 points. You get 1 point for just emerging, which is literally the basics, 2 points for developing, and 3 points for advanced. I'd like you to go back to week 2's lecture to see how you can enhance in order to get that advanced 3 points when it comes to your introduction. Because again, if you just say, hi, my name is Lena, I'm a second year engineer student, and the video that I'm about to talk about is Jesse Williams from the BET Awards back in 2000, blah, 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 blah. Okay, you know what? All you did was just hit your points, and the emerging, that's 3 points. If you want to be a little bit more creative to get that 3, then I suggest that you go back into week 2 lecture video, so that way you can see what can be done in order to get those 3 points. So I just once again wanted to touch upon what is expected of you. Here's the content, and then the closing, and then of course I will of course grade you on your eye contact, looking straight into that little peephole of a video camera right there. The volume, how high it is, not necessarily screaming, try not to be as low. And of course, at ease as you are, and it says in front of the classroom, but obviously it's in front of the camera. So those are the things that we're looking for when it comes to this particular video, I should say this particular speech. And again, that's 30 points. This is not, typically I would give you notes if we were face to face, but I will do that anyways, and you will see how at a later date, or I should say it's probably going to be in your Go React, is where you will find all of my notes and all of my critique. Now, let's go into the next one. And again, you have about 30 videos to choose from. And as you see, you're going to go along. These are the videos that you can choose from. This is the one that I just talked about, Jesse Williams' speech from the BET Awards. I can't remember exactly what year that was. And I've heard everyone talk about Majora Carter, as well as Dolores Huerta. And again, and there's the Dalai Lama as well. If you're not pleased with these, there's also this list. More links, more videos, all having to do with social justice speech examples. I believe I spoke about this last week, and I will just say it again for this week. If there is a video that's a speech of some sort of leader or a young person that you've seen within the last year, especially when it came to this pandemic and all the rallies and all the protests that we've had, and someone gave a speech that was several minutes long, and it had to do with social justice and social change, perfect timing, especially this past summer that we went through. By all means, if there's a video and if there's a clip that you would like to talk about, please send it to me, and I will give the yay or the nay. And again, this is all due in week 4, so we have about another week and a half. And again, it could be just about anything, but again, it's a matter of it just needs to be okayed by me. And then we'll just go from there. Oh, there was something else that I wanted to talk to you about really quickly. Oh, yes. So here's your goal setting paper. Goodness gracious, why is it that it's not loading up the way that I want it to? I wonder if, you know what? Look at me, trying to figure this out really quickly. Let me get out of student view, and it's worth 10 points. And again, the file upload, you can either, you know what, I wonder if I'm gonna try and do this one more time in your viewpoint, under your view. Here's your submission button. The file upload is either you can just type it in text, or you can do a, let me do this really quickly. You can either do the texting yourself or choose the file, which is the PDF, the doc, or the docs. So what I'm going to try and do, let me get this out of view and see what I can, no, I don't want to do changes. Let me get out of student view, because what I want to do is actually show you. Yes, I really want to show you what this looks like, even though you're already going to know about it in like 2 seconds once you do it yourself. And I'm sorry I'm taking too much time, but I do believe that this is really important that you see this. And you're going to have to do the same thing. So after you are done with your analysis of social change video that you've already done it, that you've already uploaded it. The next thing that you have to do is your goal setting paper. And that is about 10 points, if I'm not mistaken. It could be 20 points at best, but it's a one pager. And what this is about is you reflecting on your current level of speaking ability. The purpose of this goal setting paper is it gives you the opportunity to reflect on your previous speech experience and establish goals for the rest of this semester. Your self-reflection paper, which is actually due at the very end of the semester and after your last speech, which is your celebratory speech, will be based on the goals from the same exact list. And basically what you're going to do is compare the two. What the goals that you set out to do today or after this speech, and then you're going to reflect and be like, okay, so I did this, I did what I wanted to do. So remember, there's going to be two things. It's like the before and the after. These are the questions that you are to answer in this goal setting paper. Section 1 talks about your reaction to the experience. What organizational goals do you have for this semester based on your speaking experience? And your speaking experience is this first one, which is analysis of social change, as well as any other speaking experiences that you had. And how comfortable are you with speaking publicly? And please explain that as well. The next section talks about strengths, and the question is, what 3 things do you think work well for you when you do give speeches? And then why do you think these things actually work well for you? And it could be anything of a variety, especially, and in order for you to understand, well, what do I work well or whatever, go into your ebook and see what types of things that they're talking about. It could be delivery, it could be how comfortable you are in class, it could be because you've taken so many speech classes and you're a debater and you're in forensics. It's because you're organized, you have this tonality with you, that those are things that work well for you, and then explain why. Think of it that way. Section 3 talks about goals. Write a goal you want to achieve by the end of the semester, and it could be organizational goals, obviously, and then of course delivery goals, content goals, and an open-ended goal. So that's your goal setting paper. I'm gonna take this out, and what I will look at right here is that if I go down just a little bit further, your analysis of social change video is actually due on Wednesday, February 3rd at 11:59. And then your goal setting paper, which is what I just showed you, is due at Sunday, several days later, 4 days later, on February the 7th at 11:59 p.m. So week 4, you have no chapters that are due, but you do have a speech that's due on Wednesday and then a goal setting paper that is due that following Sunday. So I believe I've spoken about everything. Let's go over this list one more time. We talked about how I'm about to figure out, or how I deal with attendance. It's within this confines, within this space right here, and with all the videos that you're seeing that are like stacked up within this discussion board. You know what's due by the end of this week. You know what you're about to look at for this week as well in terms of the last week's chapters that were done. You know about engagement activity 1. You know about engagement activity number 2. You're now aware of your multiple choice exam 1, which is also due by the end of week 5. Your upcoming speech, which I just talked about. Your goal setting paper, which is what I also just talked about. And again, as part of attendance, in one of these chapters, it has to do with social change. You'll see 2 videos. They are very conflicting with one another by means of they are polar opposites. Give me your comparisons and how you feel that, the differences and what you would gravitate more towards and why. So that is exactly what is going on for this week. And again, if there are any questions, then you know where to find me. Hope you like this week's game show, and I will talk to you guys and have game show number 4 for next week. Until then, have a good one and have a great week and stay safe. Bye.